The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, 1893. Episode 5. The Gloria Scott. Welcome back, fellow detectives. After witnessing the sophisticated financial conspiracy that nearly destroyed an innocent clerk's reputation, you might think you understand how criminal minds operate in the modern world of business and banking. But today's mystery takes us on a journey back in time, not just to an earlier era of crime, but to the very origins of Sherlock Holmes's legendary detective career. Have you ever wondered what first awakened the great detective's interest in solving mysteries? What case taught a young university student that his unusual powers of observation and deduction could be used to uncover the darkest secrets and right terrible wrongs? Prepare yourself for Holmes's own account of his very first investigation, a tale of convict ships, buried secrets, and a friendship that would change the course of his entire life. Picture yourself in the cozy sitting room at 221B Baker Street on a quiet autumn evening in 1893, when Holmes has just finished reading Watson's latest manuscript about their recent adventures. The firelight flickers across his aquiline features as he sets down the pages with a thoughtful expression, and you sense that some memory from his distant past has been stirred by their chronicled cases. "You know, Watson," Holmes begins in an unusually reflective tone, "reading your accounts of our investigations reminds me that I've never told you about my very first case, the experience that convinced me that my peculiar talents for observation and deduction could be put to practical use in solving human mysteries." Watson looks up from his medical journal with immediate interest. "Your first case, Holmes. I had no idea you were involved in detective work before we met. What circumstances led a university student to become entangled in criminal investigation?" But Holmes's expression suggests that this particular memory carries both pride and profound sadness. Think about this moment, detective. What kind of case would be so significant that it would shape an entire lifetime's career? What mystery could be both a triumph of deductive reasoning and a source of lasting sorrow for someone as emotionally reserved as Sherlock Holmes? Holmes settles back in his chair, his eyes distant with memory. "It was during my second year at university, 1874, I believe, when I was studying chemistry and anatomy, with little thought of practical application beyond academic achievement. I was a solitary student, focused on my books and experiments, with few friends, and even fewer social connections. But there was one fellow student who managed to penetrate my natural reserve," Holmes continues with a slight smile. "Victor Trevor, the son of a Norfolk country squire, whose hearty manner and genuine interest in my unusual theories about crime and detection made him perhaps my only real friend during those university years." Watson leans forward with growing curiosity. "Trevor invited you to spend the summer holidays at his family estate, I presume. And it was there that your first case presented itself?" Holmes nods, but his expression grows more serious as he recalls the events that would forever change his understanding of human nature and criminal behavior. "The Trevor estate was everything you might expect from a prosperous country gentleman's home," Holmes explains. "Well appointed, comfortable, and managed by Victor's father, Justice of the Peace Trevor, a man whose robust health and jovial manner concealed what I would later discover was a lifetime of carefully guarded secrets." The story takes an intriguing turn when Holmes describes his first encounter with the elder Trevor. "Within hours of my arrival, I had unconsciously demonstrated those powers of observation that would later become my profession. From examining Justice Trevor's hands, clothing, and mannerisms, I deduced details about his past that I assumed were common knowledge, but which, it turned out, were secrets he had hidden for decades." Think carefully about this, detective. What kind of observations about a respectable country squire could be so shocking that they would cause him to faint dead away? What secrets might a justice of the peace be hiding that would make him vulnerable to a young student's casual deductions? I observed that Justice Trevor had once been a boxer, that he had spent time in the tropics, and that he had been involved in some kind of manual labor despite his current genteel circumstances, Holmes recalls. What I didn't realize was that these seemingly innocent observations pointed to a past that could destroy his reputation, his family, and his entire carefully constructed new life. Watson's medical training makes him particularly interested in the physical reaction. "The man actually fainted from shock at your deductions?" That suggests not just embarrassment, but genuine terror about exposure of some terrible secret. What could make a justice of the peace so afraid of his own past? The answer reveals a story of crime, punishment, and redemption that spans decades and continents. Holmes's narrative continues with growing intensity. Justice Trevor recovered from his shock, but I could see that my innocent observations had shaken him to his core. He became withdrawn, nervous, constantly watching for signs that I might have guessed the full truth about his hidden past. The comfortable country house atmosphere became charged with tension and unspoken fears. The crisis came when an old sailor named Hudson appeared at the estate, claiming to be looking for work, but clearly possessing some kind of hold over Justice Trevor, Holmes explains. This Hudson was a disagreeable character, crude, demanding, and oddly confident for someone supposedly seeking employment. Yet Trevor treated him with a deference that bordered on servility. The mystery deepens as Holmes describes Hudson's strange behavior. Rather than performing any actual work, Hudson spent his time drinking Trevor's best liquor, making inappropriate comments to the female servants, and generally behaving as if he owned the estate. Most puzzling of all, Justice Trevor tolerated this outrageous conduct without complaint or protest. Think about this dynamic, detective. What kind of power could a rough sailor hold over a respected justice of the peace? What shared secret could make a wealthy landowner submit to such humiliating treatment from someone who should be his social inferior? Hudson's presence transformed the entire household, Holmes continues. Victor noticed his father's increasing anxiety and strange behavior, but he couldn't understand what hold this unpleasant stranger had gained over the family. The servants whispered among themselves about the odd relationship, and even the local villagers began to comment on Justice Trevor's changed demeanor. The situation reaches a breaking point when Holmes observes a peculiar interaction. I witnessed Hudson delivering what appeared to be a simple message, but Justice Trevor's reaction was one of absolute terror. He read the note, turned deathly pale, and immediately dismissed all the servants, telling Victor that he must leave for London on urgent business that very night. Watson interrupts with professional concern. A message that could cause such extreme distress? Holmes, what did this note contain that could drive a man to such desperate measures? The answer reveals a code that unlocks decades of buried secrets and criminal history. The message appeared to be innocent news about mutual acquaintances, Holmes explains. But I recognized that it was written in a simple code, where every third word conveyed the real meaning. When decoded, it revealed Hudson's knowledge of Justice Trevor's true identity and his threat to expose secrets that could destroy everything Trevor had built in his new life. Holmes's investigation reveals the shocking truth. Justice Trevor was not his real name. Decades earlier, he had been James Armitage, a young man convicted of embezzlement and sentenced to transportation to the Australian penal colonies aboard a convict ship called the Gloria Scott. Hudson had been a fellow convict on that voyage, and he knew the full story of what happened during that journey to the other side of the world. The tale within the tale becomes a gripping adventure story. The Gloria Scott was carrying over 200 convicts to Australia when a carefully planned mutiny broke out. Armitage, despite being a political prisoner rather than a hardened criminal, became caught up in the revolt when the convicts overpowered the guards and seized control of the ship. Think about the implications, detective. How does a failed embezzler become involved in a convict ship mutiny? What choices might a young man make when faced with the brutal realities of transportation and penal servitude? And how might those choices haunt him for the rest of his life? During the mutiny, the ship caught fire, and many lives were lost, Holmes continues gravely. Armitage managed to escape in one of the lifeboats along with several other survivors, but the official records listed him among the dead. This gave him the opportunity to create a new identity and start a completely different life, eventually becoming the respected Justice Trevor. But Hudson's survival and reappearance threatens to destroy this carefully constructed new existence. Hudson had also survived the disaster and had spent the intervening years as a petty criminal, but he never forgot his fellow convict who had managed to transform himself into a pillar of society. When he finally tracked down Justice Trevor, he saw an opportunity for blackmail and revenge. The climax comes when Holmes pieces together the final tragedy. Trevor's desperate attempt to escape Hudson's blackmail led him to flee to Norway, but the strain of maintaining his secret for so many years, combined with the terror of exposure, proved too much for his constitution. Victor received word that his father had died suddenly in Christiania, apparently from heart failure brought on by extreme stress. Watson shakes his head sadly. So your first case ended not in triumph, but in tragedy. The very investigation that revealed your detective abilities also contributed to a man's death and a family's destruction. Holmes nods solemnly, acknowledging the complex emotions that still surround this formative experience. Victor Trevor was devastated by his father's death and the revelation of his true identity, Holmes explains. Learning that the man he had idolized was actually an escaped convict, and that his family's entire respectable existence was built on lies and hidden crime, shattered his world completely. He left England and became a tea planter in India, unable to bear the weight of his father's secret legacy. The resolution brings both justice and sorrow. Hudson disappeared after Trevor's death, presumably satisfied that his revenge was complete. The truth about the Gloria Scott and James Armitage's real identity died with Justice Trevor, but the cost of keeping those secrets had destroyed 2 generations of a family. Holmes's reflection reveals the profound impact of this first case. This investigation taught me that detective work is not merely an intellectual exercise or amusing puzzle to be solved. Real human lives hang in the balance, and the truth, no matter how skillfully uncovered, can be as destructive as any lie. Some secrets are buried so deeply that excavating them causes more damage than leaving them undisturbed. The case also established the moral framework that would guide Holmes's future career. I learned to distinguish between crimes that deserve exposure and secrets that were created by circumstances beyond individual control. Justice Trevor was not a villain, but a victim of social and legal systems that offered no redemption or second chances to those who made mistakes in their youth. Years later, Holmes would often reflect on the lessons learned from the Gloria Scott case. My deductive methods proved effective even in my first investigation, but I also discovered that pure logic must be tempered with human understanding and moral judgment. The ability to uncover truth brings with it the responsibility to consider whether that truth should be revealed. The technical aspects of the case also demonstrated Holmes's developing methodology. The coded message, the analysis of physical evidence, the reconstruction of past events through careful observation. All the tools I would later use in hundreds of investigations were first tested and refined during this tragic affair in Norfolk. So tell me, detective, did you realize that Justice Trevor's respectability was built on a foundation of hidden crime? What does this case teach us about the possibility of redemption and the price of keeping secrets? And most importantly, how do we balance the pursuit of truth with compassion for those whose lives might be destroyed by that truth? This haunting origin story reminds us that every detective's career begins with a single case that shapes their understanding of human nature and criminal behavior. For Holmes, the Gloria Scott investigation provided both the confidence to pursue detective work and the wisdom to understand its moral complexities. The tragedy of Victor Trevor's family serves as a permanent reminder that the past can never be completely escaped, and that secrets, no matter how carefully guarded, have a way of surfacing at the most unexpected and destructive moments. Sometimes the greatest criminals are those who have already paid the price for their crimes, only to find that society offers no statute of limitations on shame and disgrace. Join me next time as we investigate the Musgrave Ritual, a case where ancient family traditions hide modern crimes, and where Holmes must decode a centuries-old puzzle to solve a contemporary mystery of disappearance and murder.